Good day, everyone. I am here to talk about the Republic Act 10157 or the Kindergarten Education Act of 2012, which declares that it shall be the policy of the state to provide equal opportunities for all children to avail accessible mandatory and compulsory kindergarten education. I am Rogeline Bueno from BSED Science 2. I will be the one to tackle about the remaining four rules in this Republic Act, which is the Kindergarten Education Act of 2012. The sixth rule is the authority over the operation of private kindergarten institutions. In Rule number 6, authority over the operation of private kindergarten institutions. In Section 12, pursuant to Section 6 and 7 of the Republic Act, the Secretary of the DepEd shall have the authority to regulate the organization, operation, and/or implementation of the kindergarten education program of both public and private schools. In Section 13, private institutions may offer kindergarten education only when so authorized by the DepEd. In Section 14, regional director shall have the authority, responsibility, and accountability in approving the establishment of private kindergarten institutions and ensuring compliance of the school to the national educational policies, plans, and standards. In Section 15, the DepEd shall prescribe guidelines on the issuance of permit to and/or recognition of kindergarten schools and revocation thereof through the revised Manual of Regulations for Private Schools in a Basic Education. The rule number 7 is the transitory provisions. Next one is rule number 7, which is the transitory provisions. In Section 16, for school year 2012 to 2013 and 2013 to 2014, the following provisions are hereby adopted. Section 16.1, the completion of kindergarten summer program or the early childhood experiences in grade 1 program shall be deemed sufficient compliance with the requirement of kindergarten education for entrance to grade 1 as stipulated in the Act. In Section 16.1.1, kindergarten program, summer program, this refers to the 8th week kindergarten program of the DepEd given during summer for prospective grade 1 enrollees. In Section 16.1.2, early childhood experiences in grade 1 program, which is children who are 6 to 11 years old and have not undergone any kindergarten program, may be admitted to grade 1 provided by they pass the school readiness assessment. In the case that child fails the school readiness assessment, the child shall undergo existing 8-week curriculum, otherwise known as early childhood experiences in grade 1 program prescribed by the DepEd. In Section 16.2, hiring for volunteer teachers, the DepEd shall engage the service of volunteer teacher to handle kindergarten classes. In Section 16.2.1, volunteer teachers refer to teachers who meet the qualifications mentioned in Section 10 of this IRR. In the case there are no qualified volunteer teachers, those who are holders of education degree or education-related courses shall be considered. In Section 16.3, Elementary teachers with sufficient training on ECE as determined by the DepEd shall be assigned to kindergarten classes without jeopardizing their functions and shall be entitled to just compensation. In Section 17, private entities offering free kindergarten education shall be allowed to operate for a period of 2 years from the date of effectivity of these rules. Thereafter, said institution shall cease to operate unless authorized by the Department of Education. Rule number 8 is monitoring and evaluation. Rule number 8, monitoring and evaluation. In Section 18, the DepEd shall enhance the existing monitoring and evaluation system for the kindergarten education program for both public and private schools. BEE shall collaborate with the Office of Planning Service for the identification of common indicators to be monitored. The M&E system shall have the following objectives and scope, which is the Section 18.1, track progress of implementation of various kindergarten programs to identify best practices, issues, and gaps. In Section 18.2, determine the relevance, efficiency, effectiveness of various kindergarten programs every 3 years. So, in Section 18.3, conduct various research studies for development of innovative and cutting-edge kindergarten programs. And of course, in Section 18.4, utilize the data collected through the existing information system of the DepEd for purposes of program enhancement and policy formulation. The kindergarten performance shall be published annually for various education stakeholders to ensure transparency and accountability. In Section 19, regional directors and school division superintendents shall ensure that in Section 19.1, all schools offering kindergarten comply with DepEd policies and guidelines in accordance with this IRR. And in 19.2, existing guidelines on the deployment of kindergarten teachers are strictly complied with. In Section 20, for purpose tracking the progress of the learners, the Department of Education shall assign the learner reference number or the LRN to each child in kindergarten. Lastly, rule number 9 is the final provisions. Rule number 9, the final provisions. In Section 21, which is appropriations, pursuant to Section 8 of the Act, the initial funding for the operationalization of the free, mandatory, and compulsory public kindergarten education shall be charged against the current appropriations for kindergarten education of the DepEd. Thereafter, such sums which shall be necessary for the continued implementation of the free public kindergarten education program shall be charged to the general fund and included in the Annual General Appropriations Act. In Section 22, the separability clause, should any provision of this IRR be subsequently declared invalid or unconstitutional, the same shall not affect the validity and effectivity of the other provision. Section 23, repealing clause. Pursuant to Section 11 of the Act, pertinent provisions of all the laws, decrees, executive orders, and rules and regulations, including the provision of Republic Act Number 8980, contrary to or inconsistent with the provision of the Act, are deemed repealed or modified accordingly. In Section 24, these rules shall take effect 15 days after its publication in the Official Gazette or in 2 newspapers of general circulation. So, this is to end my presentation. Thank you. So, that's end my presentation. I hope you learned something about this Republic Act of Kindergarten Education of 2012. Thank you and God bless.